before we get into this, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi. I'm Jessica Rose. I'm Erica's executive assistant now from July, so 7 months.
7 months.
Going strong.
What's
Headed
the
up on that
best
year.
and worst thing about being my assistant?
I think the best thing is I don't have to nag you to do stuff. Like
Okay.
when it's on your calendar, like you do it. And I mean, like we're about to
I'm
go through your
compliant.
calendar now, but
Yep.
like when it's on there, you do it, and I don't have to like my first boss. I had to like nag the hell out of her.
That's annoying.
Constant. Like I would be like 15-minute warning, 10-minute warning, and then she like with a minute she'd be like, I don't want to do it, cancel it. I'm like, okay.
Oh, I don't like that. Okay.
Yeah, it was stressful. The worst thing, I don't know. Like I feel like you're actually probably my easiest boss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
My
I gotta
second boss was
step
like
up.
never ever there, and then like the other two were just kind of like
Duds.
meh.
Meh.
I liked them. They were cool. They were fine, but like,
All right. Well, I'll take
They didn't leave
Jessica
much of an
Rose.
impression on me, to be honest.
That's okay. I hope I leave an impression on you. Okay, so let's go through our calendar.
Yes. Okay. So this week is very busy. Obviously, we're launching this podcast. Big deal at the top of the week.
Yep. Adding something to the list.
Happy Monday for that.
Thank you.
You have at the top of the week, you have
Okay, I'm gonna want to cancel that.
are we okay? Just kidding. You don't goodbye to her. You have your weekly planning meeting with the team, your weekly executive meeting. You also are meeting with the people from Classic Football
I'm
Introductory.
very excited about Classic Football.
I know. I don't know what. I actually
Classic
don't know what that
Football
is
a
regarding
Chernin
at all.
company.
Okay.
And they're from the UK, and they do vintage football jerseys, Premier League, like
okay.
vintage soccer jerseys. It's awesome. If you're looking for a unique gift, whether it's a national team or Premier League team or really any soccer team in Europe or really around the world, Classic Football shirts is awesome. So we're finally meeting with them. I've been trying to meet with them like 16
I was
times.
gonna say we've moved it a lot,
And every time I do the Chernin group is like, I want a meeting. So anyways, all right, we're doing that. Then we're having a content meeting, it sounds like.
Yes.
That's Monday.
and that's Monday. I mean, I'm sure it'll get
Going to fill up.
more filled, but
Yep.
I mean, that right now is what we have. On Tuesday, we have a huge block, which I am going to try to narrow down, but we're holding for talent and brand partnerships for Food 52. So that's going to be, God only knows how much of your day that's going to take up.
I
but
have like way too much ADD, so we will not be doing that.
it's definitely
9:30
not going to be that
4:30.
long, for sure, no.
Okay.
You also have your weekly call with Amanda
Yep.
Hesser, our founder. She'll be here in the office, I think, for that. And then we also have your call with Techquity.
Yep. So on the tech stuff.
Yeah, all the tech fun stuff.
Yeah. And then we have a Nobody Cares event.
Yeah, you have a bunch of people coming in, Luke Fortney, Mike Chow, and Becky Malinsky. So that
Great.
should be like a
a good group.
supersized
Yeah.
one to start off the year.
Great. Okay.
Really excited for that.
Wednesday, I have a board meeting, and we're supposed to do
Yes.
this again. And
Yes.
then Thursday,
Thursday, you have a big event at the tail end of the day. You have a breakfast
okay.
and that you're meeting her in, I think downtown near her office for
Okay.
that. And then a bunch of one-on-ones. And then we also have the shop meetings.
Yep.
And
That's
then,
where we go through like how our commerce business is doing.
yes.
And then we have our first away game event. So we're doing a live show at the City Winery. It's called Work. It's with my mom and a bunch of great people. Okay, and then Friday I'm gonna have the tireds, but I have a lunch.
yes.
Oh shit! I have 2 lunches that day. We gotta fix
okay,
that.
I see, yeah.
We got a budget meeting. I have a board meeting on earlier in the week, and then we got a bunch of one-on-ones. So that's great.
So
Awesome.
yeah, that's your week.
Okay.
Pretty
thank you
packed,
so
stacked
much.
week.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now work.
All right. So, welcome to the first episode of Work. This is my second podcast, but my first podcast post Barstool Sports. And the reason I wanted to create a podcast which is really a vodcast actually. So, the reason I wanted to create content is that I think there are too few women in work positions, big positions, little positions, doesn't really matter, who are showing the struggle and the reality of what it's like to try to be great at work. And this is a show that is about that struggle. It's about the trials and triumphs of work. It's about work being tuition that you get paid for, which I'll get into in a minute. And hopefully you can see just by looking at my calendar, it's a glimpse into what my work life is like and what I'm trying to do here at Food 52, what I'm trying to do in the board seats that I'm on, and also what I'm learning in the process, which hopefully can be impactful or insightful or elicit a reaction for other people who are thinking about their own career. So this is a podcast for anybody at work. It's especially for people who care about making work make their life work. It's about people who want to use work as a vehicle to be greater in their life, to have options they never had before, to have the means they hadn't thought of before, to have skills they hadn't developed for. And my hope is that by giving people some small, silly glimpse into my life and my work, that it can prompt other people to take their work to a whole new level. So that's what this podcast is about. So big shout out to Sarthik. Sarthik is the brains behind the operation. Shout out to Jessica Rose. And then phantom shout out to Devin, who is my girl Friday from all the way back to the Barstool days. So the first thing we're going to talk about is work being tuition that you get paid for. I had a call yesterday with someone where we were talking about toxic being the new hard, which is a Substack that I'm writing in my head. And I really believe that. I think one of the things that's happening at work and in life is that people are becoming less resilient. And I think it's our fault, it's our parents' fault, it's the internet's fault, it's remote work's fault. Like it's all these things, but there's really no fault for it. I think what's actually happening is that the struggle and the journey of trying to be better at something, the struggle and the journey of getting feedback, the struggle and the journey of not being perfect all the time, the struggle and the journey of like trying again in ways that are like really tedious and super boring and in an innumerable amount of Google Docs, like that stuff just isn't talked about enough. And as a result, I think it's really easy for people to just give up. And I tend to think about work as tuition that you get paid for. I wrote a book called Nobody Cares About Your Career. This is one of the big missives in the book. And the reason I think work is tuition you get paid for is I was raised by teachers. I was always trying to learn something new. And I still actually feel to this day, I'm the happiest when I'm learning something new. Could be a new person, could be a new idea, could be something I'm reading, could be anything. I think the exposure to other people, places, things, ideas, topics, ways of living, ways of thinking is learning. And work is an opportunity for you to learn as much as you possibly can and get paid for it at the same time, which I always liked because I kind of felt like it was like a 2-for-1 and I was getting something at work. So I think quiet quitting is another way to get back at work where you're like, I'm going to learn and do as little as possible and get paid as much. I actually look at it the other way around where I look at it as why not learn and consume and try as many things as possible while getting paid. And I think the real question for people is how much do you want to learn? And that's the biggest thing, which is when you hire people, when you decide who you are, when you walk through the doors of work every day or you turn on your computer, how much do you want to learn is a real question. And it's the people who want to learn a lot who will go the furthest. And so that's what I mean by work is tuition you get paid for. I wish people would make more choices to learn. I think learning is annoying. It can be tough. It can be very tedious. Sometimes you have to listen to a bunch of people who you would just wish would just shut the fuck up. Sometimes you have to understudy with people who you really can't stand. Sometimes you have to do a bunch of jobs that you're like, ugh, I hate this part of my job. But doing all of those things and being able to get closer and closer to mastering a whole bunch of different things is really what work is there for. I did a podcast this week and somebody asked me a question, the host asked me a question of, hey, did you always want to work in sports and culture and lifestyle? Was that your goal? Was that your ambition to be successful in those places? And I was like, absolutely not. I had no idea that I could work in any of those areas. Like I'm from the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire. I have a liberal arts degree. Like I actually had no thinking going on. I just drank beer in college. But what I do believe, and the reason I think I got to a place where I'm really happy at work and I'm working in a profession and an industry that excites me, is that when I was early in my career and when I was doing internships and when I was at school, I was like, I'm going to do as good of a job as I can, and I'm going to learn as much as humanly possible. And when you do as much as you can and learn as much as possible in those small, shitty, insignificant, uncool, definitely don't want this on my resume, but it's on there anyway type of jobs, if you can master those jobs, it sets you up to have more options to have great jobs. And I think that's one of the biggest things is you just have to start somewhere. There's so many people out of work right now. There's so many college juniors and seniors who are panicking about their internships or what life is going to be like after college and what kind of job they're going to get. There's a whole bunch of people who are like, January, I've had this realization, my job sucks and I want a new one. I think sometimes you got to recalibrate and say, what have I learned? What do I still have to learn? And what workplace, what manager, what environment can make the biggest impact on me being able to learn and do as much as possible so I have the most opportunities and options going into the future. So that's work is the tuition you get paid for.
Now work.
So our next section is on current events. I love current events. I like to read all sorts of stuff in all sorts of random places and spam it to, we have a nobody cares text, which probably nobody on there but me cares. So I tend to spam a whole bunch of articles. One I found the other week was on revenge quitting. So our first topic today is on revenge quitting. What is revenge quitting? Revenge quitting is when you as an employee give like a big fat cake and you put it on your boss's desk and the cake has "I quit" frosted in it. It's like a big fuck you, walk out the door. I hate this place. I hate you. I hate the horse you rode in on. I hate the snacks. I hate my coworkers. It is a big dramatic way to quit. Little notice, no thought, no care. It's done in anger and it's done as a statement. So the topic is about revenge quitting. And the article was saying that revenge quitting is on the rise. So that 2025 is going to be the year where you see more revenge quitting. I don't know if this is true. I think the job market is changing so much and it's also pretty fractured. So one minute you can read that revenge quitting is on the rise and everybody's going to revenge quit. And then the next minute, like someone texted me an article this morning that's like the scales are tipping into the employer's favor versus the employees. My thought on revenge quitting is this, is that if you have a trust fund or you have the next 5 jobs lined up, or if you never have to work again, or you are moving to another part of the country or a different continent, go for it with your revenge quitting. I think one of the dangers of social, and I follow a lot of work memes, is there's a ton of work memes about revenge quitting. It's like the employee fantasy of how you're going to tell your boss he sucks or she sucks and how you can quit with how you can quit with impact. I think it makes it look very sexy and it makes it look like you're really sticking one to the man or sticking one to your boss. But the reality is this: if you revenge quit and you don't think it through, somehow, some way, some recruiter or future manager or boss or coworker is going to call your ex-boss, your ex-coworkers, your ex-HR department and be like, hey, what'd you think of so-and-so? And that person is the last thing they're going to remember is how you quit. So my thing is like, go on with your bad self if you have it all lined up or you have it all figured out or you've saved every penny you've ever made or you didn't need to work in the first place or you're like, screw it, corporate America, I'm going to go make mugs for a living. All those things are awesome. And in which case, go like give it to your boss in big dramatic style. If there is a remote possibility that you're going to have to work again or do something remotely in the same profession again, I just would think twice before you revenge quit. Revenge quitting in the shower is great. revenge quitting over a couple mimosas at your girls' brunch or your guys' football, Sunday afternoon, awesome. Like, talk about it with the people who are safe. I would not talk about it with your coworkers. Talk about it in the shower with yourself. Play the fantasy through your head in the middle of the night. But the problem with revenge quitting is that the world is really, really, really small. And you never know when it's going to come around and bite you. And it's going to be at the worst possible time. I had someone call me yesterday. I had a recruiter call me yesterday. This number showed up on my phone. And I don't ever answer my phone. And it's like, hey, this is Megan so-and-so, and I'm calling for a reference on such and such person. And it's someone I haven't worked with in maybe 8 years. But that person left their job in such a shitty place, left their team in shambles, did not get it to where it needed to be. And the people that came after them had to clean up so much mess that I was actually motivated to call the recruiter back and be like, hey, I had a good experience, but here's a couple things you might want to look out for. That happens a lot. That wasn't even a revenge quitting situation. So imagine when the person revenge quits, or when you quit in grand fashion and then you go smear your boss, your coworkers, your colleagues all over Glassdoor. People are not stupid. They put together who made the Glassdoor review. And I'm not saying don't do it. The internet is a great free place for expression, but just think twice that somewhere, somehow, that group's opinion may have bearing on what your future job might be. So that's my 2 cents on revenge quitting. In summary, the TLDR, if you're rich and you don't ever have to work again, do it and do it great and film it and make content for it and have it be awesome. If you do have to work again, maybe just do it for yourself and think twice about it. You can leave us your exit interview. We actually have a way to do that where you can just tell us and we have no bearing on your career, so that's fine. But if there is a chance you're going to be in the same industry, in the same city, in the same type of job, in the same profession, just think twice about the big fuck you, because ultimately it could fuck you. All right, our next topic is on hiring. So January is a big month for hiring. I go on LinkedIn every morning, love LinkedIn, and it's all like, I got a new job, I got a new job, I got a new job. So that's awesome. January is obviously a big month of transition. It's a new start to the year. It's a great, clean way to begin a new adventure. And one of the things I've been watching, the algorithm clearly knows I like to think about work, so it's like serving me up more and more and more and more work videos. I'm becoming slowly obsessed with Brian Chatsky from Airbnb. Like, I love him. His videos keep getting surfaced up. I think he has great things to say. And I was watching a video from him the other day, and it was about how he does hiring. And I struggle with hiring a lot because, one, I have low attention span. So for me, 30 minutes, it's like, do we have chemistry or do we vibe or not? Do I think you're an expert? I'm going to ask you 3 questions. If you have great answers for them, maybe I'll ask you 2 more and let's meet in person. There are other people who are way more thoughtful and deliberate in interviewing. I don't think interviewing is my strong suit at all. And then the other thing, which I never ever put my finger on, I thought Brian Chatsky did a great job. And what his was that by the time you start interviewing for senior manager, director, vice president, SVP, C-level jobs, you're pretty good at bullshitting an interview. You know the questions, you know how to answer them, you know how to pivot and not manipulate, but you know how to make things sound right. You know how to get the sound bite that sounds good in the room. So what Brian's point of view is that it's all about the reference. And I have to be honest, early and mid, even to Barstool in my career, I rarely referenced. I was like, it's so much time and it's so much effort. And then I got to talk to all these people. I got to schedule to get on their calendar. It's like, and I kind of mailed in the referencing. I've just always mailed in the referencing. But watching that video actually made me think really differently about referencing. And his point of view is that it's only the referencing that matters. So when you're interviewing someone, yes, you want to go through the interviews. Yes, you want to ask the tough questions, but you really, really, really want to get as much referencing as possible. And I loved that. I have to be honest, we just did this for a role we were looking for, and it was really eye-opening. Like, I was more involved in the referencing than I've ever been, and I'm so glad because it was very illuminating about how the person would fit in with our culture and kind of help us get where we needed to go. And I don't think if we had done the referencing, we would have realized that, like, ooh, this maybe isn't the right fit right now. So I loved this as a topic. I thought it was a really good thing to learn. I also think I write about this in my book that sometimes when you're referencing, you have to listen to what people aren't saying versus what they're saying. Like my friend Kim is in my women's mafia, and she would be like my big work sister if I had a big work sister. And what she does is she calls it damning with faint praise. So she doesn't like to say anything bad about anyone. I generally would just rather be more honest and authentic and forthright. But what I love that Kim does is if someone calls her to say, hey, what do you think about this person who used to work for you? I'm thinking about hiring them. She will always say as little as possible, but she will say cue words or keywords that indicate, I'd maybe think twice. So when someone says, how is this person? Would you hire them? What she says is, hey, I don't think I'm the right person to answer that because I'm not in your shoes and I'm not in this position or in your company, but I would really take a look at blank. And she just gives an ominous enough statement that makes the hiring person or the recruiter say, I should look into something. So I think you don't have to always, sink somebody's ship, or you don't always have to go all the way with the feedback. But I do think that it's important to ask the questions about the people you're thinking about hiring. And I also think out of courtesy, if you get a call about someone, to be honest about them, because ultimately that's kind of the value exchange in the network, right? The whole point, or one of the points of having a network, is to be able to reach out to people you trust with an opinion you trust. And so I think that's a really important thing. And I think referencing is something that honestly, not just managers should do or recruiters should do or hiring people should do. I actually think referencing is most important for the employee. So if you're about to take a job and you're like, I don't know, the potential boss seemed great in the interview. They were super nice. They were likable. Let's be honest, anybody can be nice and likable in an interview. I would also do the same thing. I would reference them. So in the case of, a lot of times I think when people meet me or interview me, they'll be like, hey, I want to watch a podcast. I'm going to read the interviews. You should also feel free to DM people who used to work for that person, or use your own network to figure out, oh, hey, we have this person in common. What was it like working with so-and-so? That's important because it's as much of your decision to take this job as it is the person hiring you. So I think referencing is just a good thing overall, and it's something that people should do more of. And shout out Brian Chatsky for the inspiration.
Now work.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I love BetterHelp. We brought BetterHelp into Barstool Sports, and you would not believe what the Barstool people had to say about BetterHelp. I cannot speak highly enough about it. I would actually love to bring this into Food 52. What's awesome about BetterHelp is it is a way to get in touch with a therapist or a person you can trust, and someone who you can get perspective and insight from just via text message. Like, it's so easy. It's frictionless. It's a way to help yourself. It's a way to get perspective that you don't have on your own. And what BetterHelp has done is they have taken so much friction out of this process. There's 1,000 reasons why therapy is good for you. I have seen BetterHelp in action in my last company. I believe in what BetterHelp can do for people. I think 2025 is a new year. It's an awesome opportunity to make this your best year yet. That sounds cheesy, but it's true. At the very least, make this a year where you feel well. And BetterHelp is a platform that gives you access to over 30,000 therapists. They're at the tip of your fingers. You can switch therapists with zero cost. and they can help you get to the place you want to be in 2025. So if you go to betterhelp.com/workwitherica, that's betterhelp.com/workwitherica, BETTER help, HELP.com/workwitherica, and you get 10% off your first month.
Now work.
All right, so we have a new segment, obviously, because it's a new show. But in this segment, one of the things I've observed at work is that the same topic can elicit a vastly different response based on your generation. I tend to love working with people who are a lot younger than me or who are a lot older than me. But what I also am fascinated by is a single topic can mean one thing to me and get some reaction out of me and a totally different reaction out of someone at a different age group. So in this segment, we're going to pick a topic every week, talk to a different person, and see where we disagree, where we agree, and how our reactions are different. Today's guest is our intern, Laura. So hi, Laura.
Hello.
Laura is our intern. She is from Maryland. She's fabulous. Laura and I spent a day together in Greenwich, Connecticut, helping ladies and families enjoy Christmas and the holidays, which was awesome. You did a great job.
It was amazing.
And the topic today is work-life balance. So Laura, we're going to talk about work-life balance. Jessica Rose is like fucking with me with this topic. But how do you see work-life balance? First of all, how old are you?
I'm 22.
You're 22.
Yeah, I'm 2002.
So you're a Gen Z.
I'm a Gen Z.
What's the thing with Gen Z? Describe the Gen Z.
In general?
Yeah.
Oh God. I feel like we're kind of pretty like open-minded about things and
Okay.
just like our thoughts like we're a little bit challenging what was traditional at one point.
Okay.
I feel like we're not really that scared to like maybe like especially with work-life balance, what was thought to be like work as many hours as possible. Our generation's maybe like, hey, I would rather have like a little bit more of a social life but they don't have a problem like
saying it.
Okay. And
so-
being like, I'm not going to do that.
And millennials don't like you guys.
That's the word on the street.
That's
yeah.
the word on the street.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the
From
word
what
on the
I've
inner
heard.
streets.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm what? Gen X? I think Gen X, I don't know if Gen X likes you guys or not.
Again, I think that's more of like a case.
But you guys
case
probably
basis.
hate everybody else too, right?
Yeah, but I think there is a touch of like our generation being possibly the most accepting of kind of whatever.
Oh, interesting. So you're more inclusive.
I think so.
Okay. That's cool.
I just feel like we've been kind of raised in like an environment that is working towards that. So
And
it's
are
kind of
you
what
the
we know.
first social media generation?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Okay, we can scratch that.
I think yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when someone says work-life balance to you, what feeling do you have? What's that mean to you?
I feel like it's kind of a question that's like almost a privilege to ask because
Okay.
it's like somebody who's able to discuss work-life balance is probably pretty comfortable in like their career, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to my parents about it and they were just like both of them trained in medicine and so they like their mindset is just kind of like you have to work as hard as you can for as long as possible and then you kind of maybe get to settle down.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like the only time that they got to have kind of a work-life balance was once they were comfortable.
Later in their
And
career.
so like that's a question that like someone maybe working like 2 jobs probably doesn't even think about because it's,
Yep.
So I think it is like a little bit of a privilege.
Yep.
But also I'm pretty like fresh out of college.
Yep.
Where I'm still getting a grasp on it. And I think that this portion of my life specifically, I feel like this is probably the hardest I should ever like
Yep.
work in my life. Like I think this is how you start, and it's
Yep.
supposed to be like a little rough at first. People are always like your first couple years post grad are kind of miserable, and I feel like miserable is like the wrong word in my opinion, but that's supposed to be like the nitty gritty, like
Yeah.
where you're working jobs you don't necessarily love everything you're doing. So I feel like that's my mindset towards these first couple years. And then over time, I feel like as you grow into figuring out what you want to do and figuring out
Who you are.
who you are exactly, it gets to be less hard to juggle both. And
Yeah.
hopefully you find something that's like life and work are able to work together. Because
I love that.
ideally, your career should be something that makes you happy as well.
100%. That's funny because I see it the same way, and I felt the same way. I think when you first start out in your career, and I wrote this in the book, it's like you got to work your ass off in your 20s.
Yeah.
I don't think it's miserable. When I was in my 20s, I was like drunk all the time, and then like would sober up and work my ass off, and then go do it all again. Like you're such a mess in your 20s, and you don't have everything figured out, and you shouldn't have everything figured out. It's actually, that's a luxury in and of itself, and the education you're getting. Also, I think work is such an education in your 20s where you don't have that much pressure. Do you know what I mean? Like you're there to learn, you do the shit jobs, you've got the grunt stuff. It's not like you're not supposed to be perfect. You're just supposed to be there and get stuff done. So I love that. I see things the same way. So I totally agree with you on that. And then I think, I think work-life balance is a little bit bullshit, which I've talked about before, which is this idea that everything is supposed to be balanced in your life, I think is very fake. And people who pretend to be balanced, I also find to be kind of bullshit, because you're stressed about something always. And if you're not stressed, it means you're really not pushing yourself. So there is good stress and bad stress. But I also really agree that it's a luxury. I think that it's a really great privilege to be so self-absorbed that you're like, am I balanced? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough? Like, we're so lucky, if you look at what's happening in the world, to be able to even talk about that kind of stuff. So I think your mindset is great. It's going to make you so successful.
Well, thank you. I do think it is I do find that my generation, though, and I was kind of reading your blog too, there is a thought that hard is equal to toxic, which is
definitely. I thought that was a good line. Did you like that?
I thought that was really wonderful.
I think toxic is the new hard.
I think that it does get blurred, especially now, and I think that there is such a central topic of mental health, and in Sweden, you can actually get leave for burnout and for work-life balance problems. They can give you medical leave. And so it is, I think, something that's becoming more prevalent, but it's
how do you deal with that? Because I agree with that. I see a lot of people in their 20s, they don't want to work at work. They want a lot of PTO. They don't want to be stressed. They don't want to chew their food. They want somebody to chew everything for them. How are you a freak? How do you, when you talk about this with your friends or with people what do they say, and how do you see that?
I think it really varies. I also feel like I surround myself with people who are kind of similar to me. So a lot of them I would consider myself fairly hardworking, and I think that they also thrive off of that. I feel in work hours, you're head down, kind of getting everything done, and then I also feel like our social life is absolutely fine on top of you can have both for sure, and it doesn't have to be this crazy concept. So I feel like that's kind of where most people are at, but also I think right now a lot of my friends who are unable to get jobs are more stressed because they don't have anything to do. I don't know if it's maybe my generation is just we're so obsessed with hitting certain goals and following a certain timeline. So I think I think I'm not unusual for the people I surround myself with, but I do think that there probably is a portion of people that think that things should be handed to them on a silver platter. That's so
funny, because the two don't go together. I agree. I think your generation wants that job to be perfect. You guys put so much pressure on yourselves for a perfect job versus just get a fucking job. Do you know what I mean? 100% agree. I think you've done a good job of that. When I was first talking to Laura, when I first kind of spent time with her, she was like, I'm an old intern. And I'm like, that's don't say that. It's great to be an intern. It means you're learning. It means you're trying things. But I think a lot of times, when I talk to college kids, they're so worked up about, it's actually interesting. When I talk to college kids, they're so worked up about what this perfect job should look like coming out of college. And you're actually hitting the first dose of reality, which is that perfect job doesn't exist, or you don't get it. And you kind of got to make do with what you have. And that's why I love your 20s, because it's shit gets a little bit real, and how you handle it is starting to emerge. And it's a really great time. I think what's hard for your generation is because you grow up on social, you see this perfection everywhere, and
Yeah.
you see luxury everywhere, and you see lifestyle everywhere. And then it's like, ugh, I've got to like schlep shit to Greenwich to like hand out a bunch of wreaths to a bunch of ladies. Like, that's not on Instagram.
No,
you know?
yeah, exactly. Like you see the 1% of
Yeah.
the time, the pretty stuff
Yeah.
on the other side. And like one of my friends got a job offer, and she was like, "I'm not sure if I'm going to take it. It's not really what I want to do." And it like took her like 2.5 years to get a job offer. I'm like,
So did
are
she
we
take
really
it?
being picky here? Yeah, she came to her senses. But I also feel like I am the youngest of 4, so I've seen my siblings all do it, and I always have just kind of been like, you take what you can get, kind of at
Yeah.
this point in our life, and it ends up putting you on like a path,
Some path.
that works out in some way, shape, or form, or doesn't, and you learn that that's not what you want to do, and that's
Yep.
fine. But every opportunity is exactly that, which is an opportunity. So you kind of have to like settle. Like you said it really well. Like everyone's expecting this dream job of what they studied exactly in college, and it's absolutely not that. And it takes.
Did you have a dream job when you got out of college?
I don't know if I had necessarily a dream job, but I definitely like knew a path I wanted to head on, and like I was looking at like a lot of editorial assistance jobs, and I just had this like very beautiful picture of what my future could be, and then.
Then you
was
end
just
up as an intern at Food 52, and you're like,
No, honestly, this was a really great catch. But I probably applied to like 400 jobs almost. And LinkedIn, that's the other thing with LinkedIn now, with their like easy apply, is so many people can apply to any job now. It's so much more accessible, which I think in some ways is absolutely great. But other ways, it's like, shit, how do I even get my
it's
my
gonna be hard to
resume looked
compete.
at? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do think this was maybe not exactly what I envisioned when I got out of college, but it was like, it kind of wasn't a great intersection of a lot of my interests.
Yeah.
And it did excite me. Like this was something I was very happy to have been offered.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now work.
All right. So this segment, we're going to learn about something related to business. A lot of times at work, people just bullshit that they know what everybody's talking about, myself included. And so today's topic is EBITDA, which I think most people don't understand what it means, but somehow are like, I think that means margin. So we have brought George Wells. George Wells created the Wells Group. I started working with George, I don't know how many years ago, George?
3
years ago, almost 4 years ago. We brought George in because the CFO of Barstool Sports had left, and we needed a pro. And we were staring down the Penn acquisition. And how was that experience for you?
I would say it was one of the most life-defining stints of my career.
Oh, that's
actually.
awesome.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
I mean,
Terrible, but fun.
It was exciting. It was exhilarating. It was sort of like an episode of Succession.
Yep.
And I live for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was also so important that we had, just to set some context, so we kind of ran things kind of loose at Barstool, and then Penn showed up, and we were like, "Arr!" Like scratch on the record, like everything has to be recorded, everything has to be documented. We had the Sarbanes-Oxley thing. When remember I made the joke about that, and they didn't like that very much. But you were such a godsend. You were so helpful. And then when I came to Food 52, I was like, who's going to be my first call? It's going to be George.
No, it's great. I think what's so exciting about the Penn transaction is, and it's actually dovetails into the definition of EBITDA.
Great.
Is when I first started working on Wall Street 20 years ago, there's this joke amongst the finance bro set that is like EBITDA, EBITDA, EBITDA. Even when people get drunk, this is sort of like what they chant because it's the biggest proxy for a company's success. And at Penn, in the barstool of it all, they were obsessed with our EBITDA, as you know. And so as we traverse the year, media landscape changing, political witch hunts in the newspaper affecting our revenue and bottom line, we really pushed to hit the EBITDA numbers like crazy.
Hard. Yep.
Hard. And then on Wall Street, it's sort of like, it sounds like a fake metric because as someone that studied accounting in undergrad, you think about net income. But the benefits of EBITDA versus net income are almost obvious when I explain the definition of EBITDA. So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Net income is just your net income. And so interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization are deducted from your gross earnings to derive your net income.
So EBITDA is the company makes money, right? And then you have payroll costs, and then you have marketing spend, and then you have COGS, which is cost of goods sold, which maybe we'll do in a different episode. Then you do the EBITDA, like all the money that goes out the door. It goes to the government, it goes to lenders, people who you owe money to. The money sucks out the door, and what you are left with is how much money is in your bank account.
Well, yes, of course. But the
Well, you don't
nuance.
have to say yes because I don't actually know what I'm talking
No,
about.
well, I think you do. But the difference is interest. One company versus another can have the same revenue, marketing
Costs.
spend, costs, blah, blah, blah. But if one has debt and one does not, then the interest for the one with debt will lower its net income.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, so it really tells you the health of a company, and in part because the interest is a very big variable. Who owes money and who doesn't?
Yeah, who owes money and who doesn't. And that really affects how an investor would treat one company versus another. So they want to neutralize the metric. Another is taxes. One business may have like a lot of net operating losses that they're carrying forward because they bought a company that had lost money, and now they can deduct that company's past losses against their income today. So you can also optimize your tax payout. You
By
might be
virtue of how much loss you have.
by virtue of how much loss you have, or if you're in Florida, you probably
it's
have
one
lower
state
tax.
for another.
Exactly. So
Okay, so you're an investor or you're Wall Street, and you're like, hey, I'm looking at company A versus company B. And let's pretend the two companies are exactly the same sector, same product, same revenue, same COGS, same payroll. One's in Florida and one's in New York. And the one in Florida doesn't owe any money to anybody, and the New York one does. Florida company looking really good. And when the analyst or the investor rates the company or judges the company, they're like, ding, 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 it's more attractive.
exactly. Or they want to say you can always re-domicile or move a company, right? So they don't want to give a company in Florida more credit than they deserve.
Oh, interesting. So they're like, hey, you look pretty good, Florida company, but if you moved to New York, you wouldn't actually be as good as the New York company because they got the New York tax thing.
Exactly. Same with depreciation and amortization, the last two letters of that famous acronym. One company could have a more accelerated depreciation of its office building that it bought, and another company could have a more conservative. So there's financial engineering and changes that a company may take for its depreciation and amortization. And you don't want to judge a company's overall attractiveness off something that can be so easily.
And sorry, when you're managing as a CFO depreciation, I'm assuming this goes through the audit. Gets audited. This is where like all the good Price Waterhouse people of the world make $1 bajillion, where it's a methodology you're using for depreciation, and that can change from one CFO or CEO to the next. But you got to make sure you do it in a clean way and in a way that passes an audit. Is that right?
Well, very good question.
Thank you, George.
EBITDA is non-GAAP, so it's not on your audited financials. It's not something that that has to undergo an audit. However, depreciation and amortization is a line item that one can see to calculate your EBITDA, but it's not subject to audit.
Okay, we're going to hold gap for the next, we're going to hold that thought. What about amortization? What's amortization mean?
Amortization is oftentimes the amortization of goodwill or amortization of an intangible asset like IP. It's non-cash. So both depreciation and amortization are typically for cash you spent in a previous period, which is why it's neutralized. And so one company may have a ton of intangibles that it's amortizing on its books, and then another company may not, and it doesn't really reflect the overall health.
And that's why you want to take it out.
And that's why you want to add it back. So you basically take your net income. To get to EBITDA, you can take your net income, add back interest, add back taxes, add back depreciation and amortization, and that's your EBITDA. So it's like you can calculate it either way, but I think the way to think about it is you're excluding it from your cost so that you can compare one company to another.
Okay, so I'm a little confused, and I'm sure people listening to this are as well. The purpose of EBITDA is to be able to create a consistent metric between companies,
Correct.
either for the street or for Wall Street, or either for the street or for an investor.
Yep.
And it looks at earnings, so how much money you make, so that's net income, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much money you make before interest,
Taxes,
taxes,
depreciation.
depreciation, and amortization. So company makes money, then you subtract taxes.
Well, no. So company makes money, and then you subtract everything except for interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
You
Except-
add those back in.
Or
You're
by
like,
the-
you get a little like.
Yeah, you just say, not those costs, take those out. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Because that can be more engineered.
Okay, George, this was a great discussion. So I'm just going to say it one more time for people in the cheap seats, including myself. So EBITDA is a way for investors or the street to evaluate a company. It looks at your earnings and it looks at your earnings. It looks at your net income, and then it says taxes, interest, amortization, and depreciation are kind of variable, and they should not be discounted unfairly for one company versus the other company. So you add those back in, and then you have your bottom line.
Right, then you have this universal metric.
You have a universal metric because amortization, depreciation, earnings, and taxes are somewhat variable, but they don't actually indicate anything having to do with how the company is performing.
Exactly.
Now work.
So the next section is called strategery. I love strategery. Strategery is code for when people just talk about things and use marketing buzzwords or corporate buzzwords that mean absolutely nothing. And when you hear them, that like little voice in your head is like, oh my God, I hate this person. I can't even believe I do this all day. Like, where am I in my life? What has gone wrong? So strategery is the section where we make fun of work. So strategery is the section where we make fun of work, and especially we make fun of the words that we use at work and the lexicon of work and kind of just like the corporate BS window dressing of it all. Funny story, when my mom was a teacher, my dad was a superintendent, and my dad used to run like an all hands meeting. I don't know what they called it in the school district, but he ran a meeting every month. And my mother is a little bit of a shit stirrer. And so my dad was a buzzword bingo guy. Like, he loved strategery. Like, he had his set of words. They'd get like stuck in his head and he would like use them indiscriminately. The meaning never matched up to the intent. The word was always wrong. But what my mom would do was make a bingo card and sit in the back of the room when my dad was giving, the meeting or the presentation or whatever. And whoever hit all the buzzwords would win. And my mom would give out like Baileys or some type of prize. So this is our version of that on the podcast. So every episode, we're going to do one strategery term. Today's term is circle back. So circle back. People say circle back all the time. I am not above saying circle back. I have been known to drop a few circle backs. I try not to. I'm looking at Jessica Rose to be like, do I say circle back? All right, circle back. One of the things I don't love about work, and you can tell me in the comments if you agree or disagree, but every once in a while, you kind of run into the people at work who don't do very much, but circle back very often. And what circle back is code for is, hey, I'm not going to decide or do anything right now. I'm just going to get back on your calendar in a week's time, 2 weeks' time, a month's time. And I'm just going to like sit and float and tread water until we have to get in a room again and talk about the same thing. At which point we will just talk about it in the same way and still do nothing. So circle back, I think, is kind of a cop-out. It's a way to say, hey, I don't want to deal with this right now. I don't want to make a decision right now. We're not going to address the problem right now. We're not going to do hard things right now. We're just going to kick the can down the road.
Now work.
All right, so we're going to end every episode with things that are on my mind or things that I'm struggling with and thinking about. And my hope in sharing this is it can spark a conversation for other people struggling with stuff or thinking about stuff, or who could maybe relate to what we're going through here at Food 52 or what I'm going through at work. And so my hope is to build a community through this by sharing and being vulnerable. And that's kind of what this section is about. So things that I am struggling with at work is a lot. I think one hard thing about the new year is that there's so much pressure to like get it all up and running and set and figured out. Some companies, mostly the startups I've been a part of, never have their year's plan figured out before the year starts. There's always this like hangover in January of figuring out what the year is going to look like and what the revenue is going to be. And one of the things that's really hard at Food 52 right now, and hard for me personally, is that we are in the midst of this like mega turnaround that is very, very painful and very, very hard and requires a lot of discipline and a lot of sacrifice. And when you're trying to get discipline and sacrifice and make the right decisions across hundreds of people, it becomes really, really hard to do. And I think, I look at it, January is a kind of a funny month, I think, in general, where like I feel so much pressure in January of like, oh, January is when I'm going to lose 5 pounds, or January I'm going to drink less drinks, or January I'm going to call my mom more, or it's this month of pressure of all the things that you should be doing differently or better. It's like the pressure to become the better version of yourself. But what I really think about comes with the month of January is discipline. It's kind of like everybody is so tired by the end of the last year, you like kind of let it go blotto. And when January comes around, it's like, ooh, the belt tightens literally. And you kind of ratchet things down. You try to spend less money. You try to be more present, make more forceful decisions, be more disciplined about whatever it is you're working on. And one of the hard things that I'm finding is it just gets harder and harder to do the more diffuse you want that discipline to be. And so that's something that we're struggling with. I'm struggling with. I'm trying to work out, like in my personal life, like I'm trying to work out 6 days a week. This morning, I was supposed to get up at 6 a.m. and work out. I missed my alarm, woke up at 7:15, was late, almost missed the train, missed the ferry, didn't happen at all. So discipline is tough. I think there's a lot of ways to find crutches to help you with it. But I really think at work, it can be really, really hard because discipline means pretty much making everyone unhappy. And you're always, nobody gets what they want is when you know that you're doing something right. And that's kind of where I'm at work right now, which is if nobody's happy, I'm like, then I'm doing something right. And that's a hard place to live. That's a hard place to live as a manager. That's a hard place to live as a partner. And that's a hard place to live as a CEO. But I do think it's a great opportunity. We're almost out of the month of January, thank God. But it's a great way to kind of get through the shit you have to get to so you can get out the other side. So for me personally, like trying to go through the discipline thing, I made a list for myself at the beginning of January about the things I was going to get done by the end of January and the things I was going to stop doing by the end of January. And I'm not at 100%. I don't even think I'm at 80%, but I am definitely at 60+%, which is better than I was in December. So that's kind of what I'm going through right now. I think a lot of people are doing this. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. What's the economy going to be like? What's the Trump presidency going to be like? What's happening in media? What's happening in the world? Los Angeles is burning. It's frigid in the Northeast. Like there's a lot of hardship. There's a lot of tragedy. I think the LA thing, I can't stop watching. Like, I think that's just something that's going to really sit with people for a really long time. I think it's insanely devastating. But it also, it's you see the incredible resilience and you see incredible strength in people. And I just keep trying to remember, like, the more we can be strong and disciplined and focused at work and at home and in your life and with your body and your health, the better off things can be. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today.
Now work.
So to the conversation about revenge quitting, if you have a whole bunch to say about your company and you want to do it totally anonymously and you'd like to get people's reactions on it, or you just want to let it out, you can call us at 1-866-85-ASK-ERIKA. And that's how we're actually going to end this episode. So if you have something to say, if you just lost your job, if you just quit, if you just generally think your coworkers or bosses are idiots, you can call us at 866-85-ASK-ERIKA. That's 866-85-ASK-ERIKA or 866-852-7537. And we'll have some angry/happy/liberated person take us out of this episode every week. Thank you for listening to this. Please send us feedback. You can DM me at Erika on Instagram, or I'm at Erika_ on TikTok, presuming TikTok is still around, which of course it's going to be around. You can follow this show at Work with Erika. That's on Instagram. You can DM me on LinkedIn, and that's it. Thank you for listening.